Hello, glad you could join me. Today I'm going to be making a new rake for my forge so I can easily move coal about the place and organise the fire. I've managed to break my old one, so I need to make a new one. This is my original forge rake, which I've had for a few years, but as you can see, the end has snapped off, so it's basically just a piece of steel with a weird loop on the end. So I need to make a new one, and this one broke, I think because it was too thin here, the sort of transition point between the actual leaf of the rake and the sort of solid mass of the actual tool. There was a thin section due to this set down. So on this rake, I'm not going to have a set down like I did on this one. But anyway, it broke because it's thinner there. It was then moving. It would bend as I was pushing coal out of the way in the fire. If I was ever, really forcing on it, it would bend the rake. I would then bend it back. And gradually over the years of it doing that, it got a stress, it caused a stress fracture along this line, which then created a crack, cold shut. Well, no, it created a crack really, not a cold shut. Cold shut's a fold. So this is a stress fracture, which then led to a crack, which then led to the end literally just falling off. To prevent that on this rake, I'm going to leave it much thicker, sort of on this transition point here. We're not really going to have a sort of set transition point. It's going to be a much more fluid and flowing design, and hopefully that's going to mean that it's obviously a lot stronger and isn't going to bend, and so we aren't going to be forming stress fractures, and so it's going to be much stronger and not crack and then fall off. I'll start by putting a nice taper on the end of the bar to get the preform for the leaf part of the rake, the wider part of the rake. We can then come and work on our isolation point back here, which instead of doing it over the far edge, I'm going to do it on the horn of the anvil to create a gradual isolation rather than sort of like a severe step down. So I'll take about 5 inches of material probably for the rake, very roughly as always. I'll start a bit further back and then draw the taper down. I wasted most of that heat talking to you. Hopefully on the next heat I could get a much better, more work done on the next heat and actually begin to draw this taper. It's sort of like, as I said, a gradual isolation rather than a step down, which the far edge would create. Now I've got the gradual isolation roughed in, I'll return to the flat of the anvil, clean that up, and then we can draw out a taper going up the bar over the far edge of the anvil, as it is quicker than doing it on the bick. So we can get it all nice and neat and then draw out a longer taper behind the isolation. I'll now heat up the end and begin to spread it with the crosspeen. I've left it nice and thick here. As you can see, it's still probably about 4mm thick, and so I can now bevel both sides, retaining a central mass. So hopefully we're going to have that nice rigidity in the middle by that line, created by the bevels, like a sword. And so it's going to have much more strength in the middle, hopefully again helping to prevent it from bending and for creating stress fractures. Now I'll add some shape into the end. It's pretty good shape. So I can flip it around, put this end in the fire and forge it out into a nice handle. For the handle, I'm going to do a variation on what I would call a classic rat tail or mouse tail. And so what I mean by that is something that looks a little bit like this, as in the classical version, where it's got a loop on the top and then a bar which spirals down. This one has a leaf on the end, but you can just leave it as a nice tapered, you know, a round taper going all the way down the bar. But I'm going to do an adaptation of this in that it's not going to have the loop on the end. It's just going to be a 90-degree bend, which then has a really tight spiral to start off with that then opens out as it goes down the bar. I think it's going to be pretty cool. I've never tried it before, so it's a new thing for me, but hopefully it's going to look all right. So the first step is to draw out a really long taper on the end of the bar. We want this taper to be about 30 centimeters long, as it does take up quite a lot of material, this. So I want quite a long taper and then bend it and spiral it down the length of the handle. Now I'll create a 90-degree bend where the taper begins, and this wants to be as tight as possible. Now I'll begin to carefully spiral this up. So I need it to be tighter at the root. So what I'm going to do is take a new heat, quench off all of this section, and then really pull on it, and hopefully it's going to get it nice and tight at the root. Here's the rake all finished up. I have tweaked the end because I wasn't really happy with the shape. It's one of those things that you sort of try, you know, it's an idea in your head and it hasn't quite gone to plan, quite how I wanted it to turn out. But I think I have managed to save it to an extent. It's looking pretty cool. I think the effect is there. I just needed to take more material for the actual spirals. So like maybe an extra 10 centimeters of material could have really added to it. The other end I'm really happy with. It's a nice flowing and fluid shape to the actual rake, and hopefully, as I said, that it's going to be much stronger as we've got that nice central ridge going along the rake, so it's got more mass there and there's not really any specific weak points where it's going to bend and cause stress fractures. So hopefully we can prevent that, and meaning that we can create a tool that is going to give us a nice long life. And so hopefully I won't have to replace this one in a few years. Anyway, thank you for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one.